Happy 1 year anniversary!
Woo!
That was so excited, Peter.
Here,
Believe it.
Cyber Clink, cheers.
Cheers with my water.
Years.
Well, Bridget,
So,
started.
I'm Bridget over at B-Books. It's my channel. Hey, what's up?
I'm Molly from Magical Molly.
I'm Peter from Platinum Since 2000.
And I'm Sam from Empty Ink Pots.
Yay! So, this last month, month or so, we have read Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, which has been getting a lot of hype recently because of the movie.
Because Daenerys Targaryen was cast, and so was Finnick Dare, so everyone cares about it.
Also, Neville.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that he's going to play, like, the douche canoe boyfriend.
Oh, really?
When I saw him, I was like, what are you doing there, man? No.
Well, like, Tywin Lannister is the dad, is Will's dad. And Louise Coleman from Doctor
Yeah,
Who, the sister. It's a hella cool British cast. So.
it is.
So do we want to do our thoughts?
I'll start, I guess.
You start, British. We'll just go the order that we introduced ourselves.
So, I thought it was good. I had a lot of problems with it. It just...
Like we talked about.
I had hopes because everyone was like, oh my gosh, this book is so good. And it didn't really live up to those hopes.
Yeah, I think that was my issue too. Like I was telling you guys before we went live, is on Goodreads, it's under the same grouping as like Colleen Hoover, Tamara Weber, Kat Chamalay, like really big, heavy topic romance new adult authors. And it gotten so much hype, and when you start it, it's such an easy to get into contemporary. Like it's just you usually care with the story, but like we were saying before, is I just found it was actually too long. Like it didn't need to be this long. I felt every character was so flat. Like they only existed for their purpose in the plot. Like we didn't know anything about them. And I also felt like if you literally watch the trailer, like I told you guys before, it's like they make the trailer, there's so many scenes in the trailer that look so beautifully romantic, and then you read them in the book, and it's just like they're bros. Like, I felt like their romance came out of nowhere. Like, it was completely platonic, and then at the end, she was like, I'm so in love with him. And I'm like, well, that's new. I thought we're just hanging out. So, yeah, I gave it like a 3, like 2.53. I thought it was okay, but, I mean, it's not like I would read it again or, like, recommend it or read anything else by her, so...
I gave it a 79, just for reference.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd give it on a percent. I'd probably give it like a C+ grade-wise because it did have moments.
79.
Yeah, like it had moments where it was really flowing, and then it just had so many big chunks. And like I said, also, it's the last thing I'll say, and someone else, is I hated the random chapters where someone else told the point of view. I think maybe like a third-person omniscient narrator would have worked better than just Louisa being the primary narrator and then randomly. Because I think it would be nice if it was third person, because then we could have known how Will saw Louisa and etc. But yeah, so I like with Bridget, like it was okay, but I don't agree with all the other booktubers who are like, this is the best thing ever, because I don't think it is.
Yeah.
Peter, you want to go?
Yeah, well, in short, this is the book that got me comfortable with dog-earing pages.
It's the book I didn't give a fuck about. Like,
I used to hate doing that, but with this one I was like, bookmarks over there, I'm not going to bother.
This was one of those, like, oh, sorry, you finished.
It's alright. I mean, but like practically every page has a dog ear on it. I just have to, I just can't. I mean, a lot of people say that this starts out like pretty easy moving and stuff, but I just am not a really big fan of contemporary, so for me,
obviously, this was definitely your month for our book club.
Oh yeah.
I think this is like, there's always that book that comes out that like every single woman goes to the bookstore and gets, and they just have them in like mass bulk, and I'm like always that woman coming in like, where's 50 Shades of Grey? Where's this? And so like I came in and was like, do you have Me Before You? And they were like, yeah, here's our last copy.
Yeah.
Like, it's like basic white girl, hello. Need to fill the void. It's like there's like the mom books, like, you know, like when there's the book that like everyone will like read while they take their kid to soccer practice,
Yeah.
and like there's no correlation. It's like Gone Girl, 50 Shades of Grey, this.
Yeah, but yeah, I give it like maybe 2 stars. I couldn't stand it, except I thought like the prose itself and the dialogue were kind of decent, so that earned it a star. Um, but I mean, the characters were really flat. I didn't like any of them. I mean, I get why Will was bitter, but he was like he just wasn't likable at all. You know, like I get it if you're upset, but to be like, you know, kind of jerkish about it, I was like, eh.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Like, you know, you understand him, but you still don't care.
I
Like,
mean,
that's like,
yeah, and I mean, like, and I get that once you're quadriplegic, life kind of sucks, but I feel like that's like a really just depressing message, you know? It's
yeah,
like, well, you know, you don't want this to happen to you because once it does, then you're screwed.
yeah, like I feel like it made, like I feel like for a mainstream story about something like this, it's like there's always that, it's like it felt like it was a trope, like, oh, I'm the depressed, crippled person. Because, like, you know, in YA, there tends to be this trope with mental illness that I hate where, like, the main character doesn't want to go to therapy and thinks if they take medicine, like, there's some weakness and that they're better than that. And I've always felt like that's this horrible message. Okay. I've always felt like that's this horrible message to send to young people with mental illness because, you know, like, if you write a YA book where the character's like, oh, I should go to therapy and take medicine. It's like, there aren't that many stories about handicapped people. And for this, like, mainstream popular handicap story to basically be about someone who's decided there's no point in living life and wants to die and is, like, hateful to everyone who tries to help him, like, that, how is that supposed to make handicapped readers feel? Like, I'm not handicapped, so I can't speak to it, but, like, imagine if, like, one of us were, like, even if we were just, like, in a wheelchair or, like, had a limp or something, and then you read this book and you're like, oh, cool, finally a character that, like, I can identify with, and then that character's, like, like, and like, it's, yeah, I feel like they didn't do enough to, like, I'm fine with him deciding, like, oh, I don't want to live like this, I want to die, because I think that was also important to show that that's okay to not want to live like that anymore. But I didn't like that person was just awful, you know, like, and
because the thing is, he's not mentally ill as far as we know. You know, he is perfectly sane and he is in the right state of mind, and he's just decided that his life is, you know, it's not for him anymore.
And while I think that he, like, I get that he wants to, like, do all the stuff that he used to do, because he used to, like, go all over the place and do all these, like, weird things that he was trying to convince Louisa to do. But at the same time, it's like, you can still do a lot of stuff.
I know.
After you're in this condition. But I feel like they didn't show that enough, you know?
It's like, I understand, because I do think that's an issue that we should let people, because again, like, I only think, because I think, like, and I said this in my book review, if you kill yourself because you're mentally ill, I don't consider that suicide. I consider you died of a mental illness. But if you are in your complete right state of mind and you decide, I cannot live like this, whether it's like from cancer or something like this, and you're already on the way to dying as it is, and you think, like, I just want to go now when it's my choice, like, I think as a culture we should learn to respect that, and I do like that this book addressed that. But it was like, I kind of would have liked to see him, because I find it hard to believe that, like, as soon as this happened, he was like, oh, I have no will to live, because he did live such a full life before, which we don't get to see any of, and I think it might have been more interesting to see, like, this slow descent into, like, no, I can't do it anymore, but I find it, like, because he says, I don't know if he says in the book, he says it, like, in the trailer, he's like, oh, no, I thought I could beat this too, and I can't, but I'm like, why didn't we see any of that? Like, why didn't we see him trying to live?
Yeah.
Human nature to try and live. And, like, of course you can reach a point, but this book only showed him ready to die, and I feel like that's a horrible message for anyone who is anywhere near in this position, in Louisa's position or in his position, to be like, yup, it doesn't get better.
And then he was like, she said that she was in love with him, and he was like, yeah, I love you too, but, like, you know, that's not enough. But it's like, you have these people who really care for you, and just to not even give it a shot, like, I get you had the 6 months and everything, but, like, I feel like now that he's, like, in love with Louisa, as he says,
Well, and it's
It
just
could
like,
just like
and like my thing was, I thought like the story arc that I feel like, again, I think the movie's gonna do a better job of showing it, is he couldn't live the way he wanted to anymore, and so then he saw someone like Louisa who wanted to like be more cultured and do more with her life, but like financially didn't have the means, and he thought, oh look, here's someone I can help live her life to the fullest. And I thought that would have been such a better turn of him thinking, like, you know, I may not be able to go back to the life I had, but I can like use this life to help other people.
Yeah, but like the thing is, in the book, you know, aside from her sister and stuff like that, she is content with her life.
Yeah, which we talked about before, that like that's another issue I have with the book, is I don't like that idea that if you live a small life, as Will called it, that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, because it's like almost like saying that life, you know, quality of life is how much money you spend.
Yeah, that's kind of what I felt like.
But
I didn't like. Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
well, I mean, but it's, you know, with like you could just as well have like a really great life by just spending time with people, you know.
Yeah,
the people that you care about.
like
Yeah.
she says, like, oh, I've become a whole new person because of you. My thing is, like, but you will never, it's like almost like saying, like, oh, he fixed her. Like, he came in with all his money and was like, look at this wonderful life you should have led. And I'm like, but what was wrong with what she was doing? Like, she had a job that she loved. She cared about her family. She liked reading and just being with people. And, like, yeah, there were aspects of her life that she did need to work on. Like, she needed to work on being independent. She needed to actually find a healthy relationship. But I don't think she need like some rich guy to come in and like take her like scuba diving and then like send her to Paris, because like there's this movie that it made me think of. There's this movie called Mr. Holland's Opus, and like this guy's a music teacher and he like dreams of becoming a famous composer and he never does. And then at the end they're like forcing him out because they don't have money for the arts anymore. And they get up and they give this speech and they're like, oh, Mr. Holland isn't famous, you know, except in this little town, and he may not be like widely known. They're like, but think of all the people's lives he's touched. And that's my thing, is like Louisa was there for her family and her grandfather and her sister even when they didn't deserve it, and she was there for Will and his family. And I hate the idea that because she was this poor person who didn't go skydiving and shit, that she led some empty, meaningless life. Oh my god, sorry, someone is FaceTiming me. Yeah, that could be able to.
Okay, Sam, you have to
Sam,
talk
yeah.
to
I'm so sorry, Sam. Me and Peter have just been like, fuck the book.
the have.
Honestly, it was fun to watch because I kind of, Bridget knows, like I almost decided not to read this at all and just not be in the live show, and then I was like,
I was like, I can't do it.
He was like last week. He was like, I barely ever read the book. No.
That was me with American Gods. I think that was all of us with American Gods.
That was me. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the past week I've been reading more and more of it, and it's one of those things like where you don't want to read it while you're not reading it, but once you start reading it at some like any time of the day, and like you get like 10 pages in, you break the mold, then it's easy to flow through it. But until you get to that point, you just have no motivation at all. That was my problem. And yeah, Molly said it best. It could be so much shorter and still just as good. I rated this, I think, 3 stars, but it was another book that was hard to rate, like American Gods. Like, there were aspects that I thought were done finely, and then things that should have been just balled up and thrown out altogether, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, one of the things I had such an issue with, and I talk about this all the time on my channel about books and media that deal with rape and assault, because I kind of have this mindset as someone who has been assaulted that's kind of like, if you never experienced anything like that, how on earth could you know how to write it? And it's not something you can just, like, research. And I felt like that was also the issue with the handicap thing, is, like, I feel like she must have hardly done any research into, like, what that's like, because it did feel like that. It felt like she was writing a handicapped character when she knew nothing about being handicapped.
Yeah.
And the same with Louisa's rape plotline. Like, I thought that was, like, an interesting idea, like, oh, this is why Louisa does this and acts, like, so closed off and, like, dresses, like, in a ridiculous way or whatever. But the thing is, I don't know a single assault survivor that acts like that. And that's the thing, is it was almost like it was like Louisa couldn't just be like quirky for the sake of it. We had to give her some like ridiculous backlight, and it was like there was no build up. They were just randomly like, oh yeah, she got raped, and now she's like sad sometimes, and it's like, what a horribly inconsiderate way to deal with that. Just like I feel like we've said, I feel like how she dealt with quadriplegics was inconsiderate. I felt like every issue in the book, like poor, like, you know, class issues, you know, people who like have trouble getting jobs. I felt like it was all so inconsiderate. Like everyone was means to her stupid romantic comedy. Like the more we talk about it, the more my rating goes down. The more I'm like, oh, yeah, fuck this book. Like,
yeah, I feel like, I don't know. It's just, it could have been better.
It's a nice idea that was executed horribly. Like, that's the issue, I think. That's why I think the movie is going to be better. I think the movie's going to fix it. Like,
yeah, when I watched the movie trailer, I was like, this is going to be better than, like, how I pictured the book in my mind.
I cried when I watched the trailer.
Yeah, I was about to cry when I was watching the trailer. I was like, the book didn't make me feel this way. And I get that usually I feel that books are better, but, like...
Sometimes that's not how it is, because every time I watch that trailer, I start tearing up. Every time when she's like, I can make you happy, I'm like, God damn it. Like,
when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh, not one of these. Because I hadn't read the book at all yet, you know. So I saw it, and I'm like, oh, is it going to be like, you know, one of these contemporary romance?
Nicholas Sparks. This is the formula of every Nicholas Sparks book. It's like two people of different classes meet, and then something sad happens, and they have to deal with it, and they're always white, and that's the thing too. Like we said before we went live, is like I couldn't figure out, because again, like this takes place in England, and England has a different, you know, cultural like family and class system. And, you know, in America, a lot of times, like, white people are the, like, top 1%, and in England, like, that's not true because they're less diverse. I don't know. But again, like, since I don't live in England, there was culturally stuff that I didn't, like, click with. But, like, they kept saying tea when they meant, like, have a meal, and I was so confused. And I was like, what are you talking, what do you have tea at, like, 7 on a Friday night?
She was like, I'm really good at making tea. That's my only good quality.
And he was like, oh, like, we're going out on a date. Will you be fine for tea by yourself? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
it's having a meal. But, like, because, like, Louisa's, like, 27 by the end of this book and living with her parents. And I'm like, is that normal in England to live at home for that long? Or is Louisa just a loser? Like, I couldn't understand it. And even by the end of the book, she's like, oh, yeah, I'm making so much money. I'm like, then move the fuck out of your parents' house. What in the hell?
Yeah.
Like,
and
what?
Then she lives in, like, she lives with Patrick, but it's like I get that, but then she moves in with Will.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know. It's...
And I understood her parents expecting her to have a job and provide while she lived with them. Like, once she moved out, I'm like, why are you giving them money? You don't live in their house anymore. Like, I understood that, like, her living with them at that age. But then, like we said, the sister with the fucking child was just there for free. And so I couldn't understand. I'm like, is this family pathetic and
dysfunctional?
Oh. I was like, is this family pathetic and dysfunctional? Or is this how, like, British families live? You
but, like,
or something. Like,
it bothered me that, like, she said that she was, like, she moved out. And, yeah, like, I get what you mean. Like, does she really need to give the money still to her parents? Like, I get that you want to sort of help your family out and stuff because they don't have a lot of money, but what about the other sister? They're like, she's forcing them to pay for her college and stuff. It's like,
I think
she said she had enough money, but then she still needed money from her family.
What I think is that she wanted to create a sort of sibling rivalry, and
oh no, that wasn't how I saw it.
But it's like, that's not rivalry, that's like a double standard.
Yeah.
You know?
That's just like emotionally abusive parents.
Yeah, that really is. And then the fact that the mom's like, no, you're not going anywhere or else you're kicked out. And she's like, I've been supporting you guys.
And then she judged her for helping Will when she's been with him for 6 months, and like, this is the last time she's going to see him. But she didn't judge the other daughter at all for having a kid.
Yeah.
And like we said before, too, like, everyone's like, oh, you know, like, your daughter, you know, she's struggling. And I'm like, here's what I don't get. You don't just magically get pregnant That's a choice. Like, I don't. And that's the thing. She's like, oh, yeah, if you go be with the man you love while he dies, you're kicked out. But your daughter who, like, got pregnant and contributes nothing and is doing nothing with her life and, like, bitches about which bedroom she stays in, she's cool. She can stay. That was so stupid. The bedroom part. Can we talk about that?
Let's talk about that. That bothered me so much.
They went and slept on the floor. Like, you're the parents. Like, tell your daughter to get over herself.
Yeah, and it's like, the daughter, I don't even remember their names. The girl, the sister.
I don't know.
The sister, so was like, oh, I need the bigger bedroom because I have a kid and stuff. But it's like, why don't you have your own house? Like, I get you that you need to come. Why do you even need to come back to see your parents over the weekend, every weekend?
Yeah, like, if she's going to school, you know, like, she can,
stay at school.
Spending that money on school.
Visit and then go
she has enough money to go to school. Why doesn't she just get her own house?
And she obviously stays somewhere during the week. So why doesn't she just stay there over the weekend? And if she wants to come visit her parents, I understand that. You want to come visit them. But, like, come visit, then go back and stay at your house. And then if you want to come again, come back, then go back home. Like...
And the whole bedroom thing where she, like, came downstairs and was like, hey, Mom, can I have the bigger bedroom now? And I'm like, why don't you just move the fuck out? Because you're 27 years old. You have a full-time job that pays a ton of money. Like, what is this? You're 27 and you're asking your mom for permission to go to a certain bedroom? That's the thing, too. No one had friends in this book, either. Like, no one had one friend. And that's the thing. And she, like, hung out with Will and her stupid boyfriend. Oh, her or the sister or the parents. Nobody had any friends. It was her birthday party. What a pathetic birthday party in your mom's house with your family, your douchebag boyfriend, the handicapped guy you're a caretaker for, your, like, mentally ill grandfather. Like, turn up. Like, that's the thing. I was like, what do they do with their lives?
They said that Will had friends, but then they came and they're like, hey, you're handicapped, bye.
Well, yeah, his girlfriend started, like got married to his friend. Like, I love that they came to tell him. Like, like, don't tell him. Don't invite him. Like, just pretend you don't know.
Like, they both show up. His ex-girlfriend and his best friend. It's like, you know, she just couldn't deal with it, so we're getting married.
It's like it was a real struggle for her. You don't know how hard it was for her to get over this.
It's hard for me that you're handicapped, so I decided to sleep.
Yeah. But, well, I'm sorry I couldn't be there. I'm kind of stuck in this chair.
That was honestly my issue with this book, is everyone was so pathetic. I was like, you're all so unlikable. You're all so bitchy. You complain about the dumbest things.
And it was like everyone hated Will because he was in a wheelchair, but it was like, would people really react that way?
That's my thing, is she was like, oh yeah, because, like, listen, I go out in public all the time and see kids in wheelchairs. There used to be a guy in my German classes who had, like, I forget what it was. He had this kind of disease where, like, he every year lost more and more control of his body.
Oh, like that, like Stephen Hawking has.
Yeah, it wasn't that, but it was something like that.
Similar to that, yeah.
And we thought he was annoying as a person, but, like, we never were like, oh, Ian's in a chair, let's stare at him, or, like, we never, and, like, that's the thing, is there's tons of kids on my campus in, like, motorized wheelchairs, and I'm never like, oh my god, I can't walk. There's a guy who works, because I work in the post office and the bookstores right next to us, and there's this guy who he was born without these parts of his arms, without forearms and hands, and he, like, brings mail to us every day, just, like, holding it, and I've never once been like, none of us are ever like, oh my god. Like, that's the thing, too, and Europe's, like, a more advanced place, so I find that so hard to believe that everywhere you go, everyone would be like,
it's an old wheelchair.
I found it hard to believe that, like, okay, Louisa, like, Googles and finds this forum with people who are dealing with these kinds of things. I find it hard to believe that, like, Will is, okay, he's not a great person, but he's level-headed and he's independent. He could have looked and tried to reach out to people in this situation and tried to have them help him.
Yeah, like, help him sort of.
This happens every time I try to talk about this book. Like, I just end up burying my face in my hands.
I just can't understand how I'm feeling. Because, yeah, like, that's the thing, too, is I'm like, it's also, when she comes in, it's like, let's find him the will to live. No one thought to do this?
Let's find Will.
But, like, parents weren't like, hey, let's think of something to do. They were like, well, here's a room and books. What do you mean you're not happy to sit here and stare at the window all day? Like, a person who was able-bodied wouldn't want to do that. Like, everyone was so stupid. Everyone was so dumb.
The mom was like, well, we haven't tried that yet.
Yeah.
What the hell did you try? Like, I don't feel like you tried anything.
We tried to talk to him.
I bought him a book last week. I don't even think he read it.
But, you know, about the whole giving Will the will to live, you know, I kind of had, you know, a mini genius moment. I was like, what if his name is Will? Like, foreshadowing to the fact that he leaves her everything in his will.
Will.
And then he did. How weird, too. To be like, yeah, I knew you for 6 months. Here's all my money.
Yeah.
You didn't give anything to Nathan. What about Nathan, who cared for him for 2 years?
What about your mother? Like.
Well, I understand.
Well, I mean, maybe, you know, for all we know, he could have just been like, screw it, she's pretty, you know. And just,
I understand that.
Such a weird ending that he was just like, go to Paris. Here you go.
Also, I thought it was like, I understand not giving it to his parents just because they already have a lot of money, so like they don't really need the money and stuff.
Yeah.
But like Nathan took care of him for all this time, and also like.
Can we just talk about, too, that the way he got handicapped was so stupid?
Run over by a motorcycle.
Did it look before you crossed the street? Like...
Yeah, and he was like, and it wasn't my fault, and it's like, it kind of was. You learned that in kindergarten.
Yeah, it's like, is this motorcycle...
You hear it, too.
Like, how did it hit him? Because
he's not deaf.
Dated this guy once who got hit by a car twice. And is perfectly well-bodied and, like, lived his whole life. Like, they really gotta fuck you up for you to not just be paraplegic, but to be quadriplegic. Like, what did it do? Hit him and then run back over him a few times?
Yeah, I mean, I think it even states in the book, it's like, yeah, I'm the most unlucky man on the planet. I was crossing the street and then I got hit and that made me quadriplegic. It's like, okay.
Like, there are women in Middle Eastern countries who are, like, burned alive and have, like, acid thrown in their face, and they're still walking around living. They're a rich white guy who can afford... Can we just talk about how this was, like, rich white privilege was, like, all over this book? Was, like, the only way to be happy is to be in the top 1% and to do really pretentious things like go to the opera and scuba dive with fishes. And if you don't do that, then you're stupid and your life has no meaning. Like, that was this whole book. It was like Donald Trump came in and was like, listen, this is what America should be, except we're in England.
Yeah.
That's the whole book. It was just white privilege.
But it was like...
I can't help but feel like Jojo Moyes kind of agrees with that because, like, not once does Louisa say, at least as well as I can remember, I don't think there is a single time when she says, well, yeah, except for money.
There's like
also, I think that she... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
That she just, like, since she's trying to get him to live and everything, and since they have a lot of money, she can just be like, I'm going to use all your money so that we can help him, because you haven't done anything with this.
Here's the thing, too, is, like, lots of people get paralyzed all the time, and they're not all billionaires. This story would have been more interesting if they were both poor, and we're like, hey... And, like, I'm just so sick of the plot of, like, a rich guy meets a poor girl, and it's like...
Yeah, I mean, I think she was trying to evoke that sort of 50 Shades of Grey thing.
Oh, my God. It's like the Notebook. It's like everything where it's like, oh, our classes are different. But the thing is, at this day and age, it's 2016. Like, yeah, classes still play a part. But, like, my sister's marrying someone whose, like, family has, like, a much more money than ours. And never once has she been like, oh my God, my fiance just like went on richer vacations than us as children. Like, I just don't know. Like that's never a thing because we don't live in the 50s or like the 1800s where people give a shit about that.
Yeah. It's like personality excuse.
Like, that's the thing. It's just like, oh, you're rich? Dope. Let's go. Like, I hate this trope we're, like, throwing into books anymore that, like, in 2016, anyone gives a fuck how much. Like, I have friends who have way more money than me. We're never like, oh, it's so weird because Molly doesn't have as much money and I don't know how to hang out with her because she's poor. Like, I just, like, who's acting like this? Like, you're adults. Like,
move on. Meet people who you actually like and have similarities with.
I kept waiting for the book to go in the direction where Louisa was like, no, it's okay to have, like, a small life, to, like, just be happy with, like, the people around you. But, like, what was the moral of this story? Like,
the moral of the story
go
is...
abroad? Like,
Yeah, the moral of the story is you meet a rich quadriplegic who will give you all of his money.
the moral of the
So that
story
way you can go everywhere.
Isn't it like to be...
trip to Paris. That's the moral of the story, is help some sad guy kill himself. Go to Paris, all expenses paid. That's what the moral of the story is. They were like, oh, 50 Shades of Grey. He gave her a laptop and a car. We're going to one-up it.
Didn't she, isn't the thingy for the movie, like, Live Bravely or something?
Live boldly.
Yes.
I would love it if, like, the movie changed the ending and, like, just the whole, like, this is one of those cases where I'm like, change it. Where I'm like,
Yeah.
don't do this.
Because, I mean, like, you could, it's like the whole story didn't mean anything in the end, really.
Right?
Because
What was
he
the
just
point?
went through with it. And it was like, it would be different. Like, I saw a comment somewhere, and they were like, oh my god, it's like one of those stories where, like, the girl, like, he meets a girl, and then they fall in love, and then he lives on.
Except you didn't.
That would have been a bit better. Just because he would have actually done something and affected him in a way that he changed himself so that it was like, well, I could keep living with her rather than going, I like you, but still I'm going to die.
And it's like,
here's the thing.
It tells you that the morals the meaning's going to be not her changing him, but him changing her. And then we see an epilogue of her just like one chapter of her just like drinking coffee in Paris, and she wrote it so that you would need to buy another book to see anything come from this, and that is just...
It was like a really shitty Fault in Our Stars. The Fault in Our Stars was Hazel Grace had much worse cancer than him, and she was content that, like, I'm going to die. I cannot live my life. And he came in and was like, yeah, you can't live your life the way normal people get to, but you can still try. And so they went to Amsterdam together, and they got funded and stuff. And again, it showed, like, yeah, this sucks. We have cancer. It's really hard for us to have a full life. We're going to die young, but let's live as much as we can now. Let's, like, appreciate the relationships we can have now. And this whole book's idea was like, oh, like, if you can't do this, then you should die. And it's like, I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, you know, Mom, if you ended up quadriplegic, do you think you could have the will to live? And she's like, yeah. And I said, I don't think I could, because I already have, like, depression. And I feel like that's an issue that so many people who get, like, these life-altering disabilities suffer from. And I feel like, you know, like, the media has this platform to help those people and to, like, educate, and it didn't do any of that. Like, I didn't leave this feeling like I knew anything about that. Like, I didn't feel like I knew anything about quadriplegics. I don't feel like if a quadriplegic were to read this, they'd be like, oh, I am inspired. Like, because he kills himself. And, like...
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, people say that it's titled Me Before You because it's, like, her before she meets him. But it could have just as well been about him, that she changed his view on life, and, like, been like, well, you know, there's the little things that are worth living for.
Yeah, that's what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be like a small life, because that's what he kept calling it. Like, someone who lives, like, a normal day-to-day life to come in and be like, don't have to spend millions of dollars going to, like, Fiji waters and bungee jumping for your life to have meaning. Like, you can just get up and, like, read a good book and hang out with your mom, and that was still a well-led life. Like, I hate that he came in and was like, oh, you working a job that, like, you enjoy and spending time with your family is a meaningless life. Like, I hated that about it.
But if what happened eventually came to me, I was like, oh my god.
We're just rewriting the book. We're like, listen, we got some revisions.
Is she, like, she met him and he's all, you gotta go live your life and do all these things. And, like, because that's what he did when he was living, like, his life. But if she taught him that you can appreciate the small things in life and, like, showed him how good her life was,
Yeah.
in comparison and like switched his point of view instead of being the other way around, like that would have been so good.
Right. Well, just the fact that like he was like, oh, you should get back into reading, and she was like, yeah, you're right. And so she was reading like essentially just like romance novels and stuff, and she was like, oh, I know it's not really like that great, but I'm enjoying it. And he was like, no, read these classics. Like I hated that too. Like it was this stupid white male idea that you have to be like so pretentious and spend so much money, and like there was nothing wrong with Louisa's life, and I hate that he came in and like said there was.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! I'll be right back. Y'all can.
Yeah. Now and like.
I get
in the movie, I think it would be kind of. I don't think they're gonna be able to change the ending necessarily, but they can still change the merits on which he dies. You know, they can make it that he dies having like with a new point of view. You know, where it's like I've come to appreciate my life, you know, as it is. You know, even if he still wants to go through with it.
Well,
he didn't die naturally. He said he was dying anyway.
I think that he like. If he, what was I gonna say? That
we got time, don't we?
It was something that had me. I've lost it. It'll come back to me soon.
What was I gonna? I think there was something else I was gonna say.
Prancer didn't like the book either.
You've got good opinions.
Look at her face. She's like, look at her. She's like, fuck that book.
You know, if we write this book that we're rewriting now, we should call it Her Before Him.
Yeah.
That's good. I like it.
A blue cover with like curly handwriting.
Let's do it. Let's do it. It's gonna be the. Oh my God, though, for real, I just realized like this is the opposite of the Fault in Our Stars cover.
Oh, that's really funny.
Oh
yeah. I still need to read The Fault in Our Stars.
I like it. It's like it is what it is. Like it's a YA romance. I think it's cute.
Yeah, I have the audiobook by John Green that like he actually narrated. I'm going to listen to that.
I'm listening to the most ridiculous audiobook. I have the physical book, but I haven't had time to read it, so I got it from the library. It's a Hillary Clinton and Hillary Clinton.
That is great.
I really like Hillary Clinton. I voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, we know you like Hillary Clinton.
Everyone knows. And it's like 21 hours.
Wait, is she narrating it?
Yeah, she is.
Oh, fun times.
I feel like Hillary's just like in my apartment telling me a story, and she's just like, "Oh, and we laughed," and I'm like, "Oh, did you, Hillary?"
I listened to an excerpt of the audiobook for this because I was thinking about getting the audiobook so it would be easier, and there was just something. It sounds so ridiculous. It sounds so ridiculously British, if that makes sense. Like. It sounds like an American person trying to do a British accent and doing it very, like, exaggerated.
Maybe it was.
Suck. I tried listening to Graceling last night, and I got, like, 20 minutes in and was like, this is so dumb. I can't. I felt like it was, like, a Renaissance fair reenactment. Like, this music would play, and she'd be like, sir, where have you been this evening? I was like,
oh, my God.
I can't do it.
Yeah.
I want a petition for Jim Dale to narrate every book ever. Just
right, yeah.
I want like an audiobook of the Bible, and Jim Dale narrates it. Like.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like we said everything we say about this. We don't like it.
Let me just I have plot points we could talk about.
Okay, yeah.
What do you think of the setting?
I just thought of something like a random stat that I heard. There was a study done on. Like people who are quadriplegic and people who win the lottery, and like so many years later, the quadriplegics are happier than the people who actually won the lottery.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, because it's all about the perspective. Because a lot of people who win the lottery then end up losing all of that money plus more because they just spend it on random things or they gamble it away or, things like that. And so...
What I kept thinking about when I read it is I don't know if any of y'all, because you're all a lot younger than me, I don't know if all of you ever watched it's a Canadian show, it's called Degrassi. And Drake the rapper, he was on it originally, and he played this character who got shot in the back and then went from being a basketball star to being a paraplegic. So he could move his arms, but from I guess right under his chest down, there was no feeling. And so he could move his arms, so he had that ability. but he still, like, and there was a bunch of episodes where him and his current girlfriend were trying to have sex because he couldn't, and he, you know, like, for most humans, like, I think that is a very normal thing to be very upset about, to find out you can't, you know, do, like, this one basic, you know, human intimate function anymore, but, you know, through the episodes, they find out, you know, like, you know, we can still, like, touch each other and be close to each other and, like, love each other. And, you know, is it fair that we can't have actual sex? Like, no, that's not fair, but, like, we can't just give up because we can't do, like, this one bodily function. And so, yeah, it is even harder for Will because he can't move his arms and he can, like, barely move his hands. But, like, you can still, like, lay with each other and, like, be close to each other. And, like, as someone who likes sex a lot, I'd be real sad, too. If somebody was like, hey, Molly, you can't do that anymore, I'd be like, well, that sucks. But I wouldn't, like, I'd like to think I wouldn't be like, well, life is not worth living now because I can't get it on. Like, because, like, that was, like, seriously, like, when Will was giving his speech, he was like, oh, yeah, like, he was basically saying, like, can't fuck you the way I want to, so might as well die. Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, too, is his last girlfriend left him because she couldn't mentally handle that, which is understandable. But here's someone who knows you, understands who you were before, and can mentally handle all the stress that comes with being the partner of a quadriplegic, and you're just throwing her away. Like, way to be a selfish son of a bitch. Like, I don't...
That bothered me, I agree.
That's, yeah, like,
It was like she could handle him, like...
That's the thing, like, yeah, like, is if you, like, meet someone who's willing to take you with all of those flaws and stressors, and she's already proved that she doesn't mind, like, she doesn't see him any different, like, she...
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, yeah, I understand, like, how sad that would be, like, oh, I love this woman, and I can't actually physically make love to each other, but, like, I mean, you can still touch each other, and, like, he can move his hands, like, it wouldn't be, like, this beautiful, ideal, passionate sex, but they could still be together and be happy, and that's what I hated, is he wasn't even willing to give it a chance. Like, here's someone...
Really?
That's my thing, is I'm like, she is willing to do this, like, for this to be her life, and you're just throwing it away. Like, it's so, I hated it.
Yeah, and, like, especially when Louisa gets there, he's pretty much in the middle of a tantrum that he's been having since he ended up in the chair. And it's like, just calm down.
Yeah.
And, like...
Yeah, to me... No. It didn't even seem like, oh, he's very depressed and has no... It just seemed like he was a brat. Like, it didn't even seem like he was so sad because he... Like, I'm trying to think of, like... I'm trying to think of, like, examples of, like, stories I've read where, like, you know... Okay, I saw Captain America Civil War last night.
So did I.
And one of the... No spoilers, one of the characters, like... loses, like, their, like, spine, has a spinal injury and is having to use mechanical legs to walk, and this is someone who is, like, a soldier and stuff, and he's talking to Tony, and he's like, you know, he's like, this is a bad deal, like, this sucks, and he's basically saying, like, I hate this, like, I'm unhappy, he's like, but I'm not going to stop living my life because of this one thing.
Yeah, and he's like, well, like, I did all this stuff before, and I can still do stuff now. It's just not as...
Yeah, it's just, this is your life, and you just live it however you can.
Like, you don't get, like, and that's the thing, is I don't want to...
And I was like, Will should have reacted that way. What the heck?
It's like, obviously, like, none of us can understand how debilitatingly, like, sad that would be to find out, like, like, you can't even feed yourself, you can't even wash yourself. You want to read a book, you literally can't even hold it. Like, yes.
Well, now we have ebooks, so he could.
I mean, yeah, get an audiobook, get one of those book holders, I don't know. And so, but that's the thing, too, is he's also so wealthy that I found it really hard to believe that, well, also, this book was written a while, like a while, like, not recent, like, a couple of years ago.
Let me look it up.
And
like
just
2012, I think.
Yeah, like, well, and just since then, since 2012, just in 4 years, technology has gotten so much further, and he's wealthy, so it's not like he can afford it. I would have just rather he died naturally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can't speak for people who actually are quadriplegic, but I feel like, you know, I'm religious, so I like to think that there's, you know, something after life. But if this is all I've got, I don't just want to waste it.
Yeah.
You know?
Covered. too, I didn't even think of till you said this, they never really talked about anyone's religion in this, or anyone's faith, because if you're that ready to die, you must think there's something after this, because if you were an atheist,
that's better.
You wouldn't be willing to give up all you get.
Yeah.
Or you must have at least like given it some level of thought, and if you had, I'm surprised you didn't bring that up with Louisa at all. If they were so close, apparently.
I didn't like. There was never even like a discussion where like he was like, "Oh, do you like?" Like I read When We Collided recently, and there's like a moment where like the characters are like, "Do you believe in heaven?" And it's like that's a normal conversation for people to have.
Yeah, I mean, clearly his mother does because she's like a magistrate and stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean he does. You know?
Yeah.
It
And
just goes back to the characters being so flat. Like it was just like, they were just a series.
You can't really sympathize with them. Like so many people did, but I just didn't.
Yeah, that's my thing. Is again also it's like I can't think of any other book where there's like a character. The only other book I can like think of where a character's in a wheelchair is if anybody's read Angel Fall. The younger sister is a paraplegic in that, so she can't move her legs. And,
yeah, I remember
yeah,
that.
Yeah, and it's like, this is the issue is we need more handicapped storylines. I saw this documentary one time called, what the hell was it called? It was like, Cinemability is what it was called, and it was about how wrongly we portray handicapped people in the media, and we portray them as like these weak, sad people. And I just feel like this book fed into that, like fed into the like, oh well, once you like don't have a completely able body, there's no reason to live, and it's just stupid because like think of all the people who don't have completely able minds, and no one's ever like, and whenever you read a story, like I have depression, and whenever I read a book where the main character has a mental illness, the whole point of the book is like, yes, your brain doesn't work right, and that's so unfair, and it sucks that you have to deal with this for the rest of your life, but you can still live, you can still do all these great things, and this isn't going to be what defines you. But then when you read things about physical handicaps, it's like, this is what defines you, there is no reason to live, and I hate that, because it's like, it's such a bad message. So like if anyone who was in a wheelchair read this book, like how are they supposed to feel about it?
Yeah. So I just feel like he was kind of throwing a tantrum. Like he wouldn't even go outside, you know?
Yeah, like my suspension of disbelief on how he acted didn't even make sense to me either. Like I find, like if anything, you would think someone who did all those adventurous things would fight harder than anybody to try and live a fuller life.
Yeah, because like he's done these things, and just to think that you have done them, and it's like at least I got to experience them while I still had a full able body, but now I can do like other things still. Like she was gonna set up skydiving and stuff, like because he'd done all this other stuff.
Look at what happened to Stephen Hawking. Like that was a real and I never saw the movie. I want to, but I remember there was a clip in the trailer where he was like losing the ability to walk, and he wasn't gonna have it much longer.
Which Stephen Hawking
Well, like one with Eddie Redmayne.
That's the same. No,
that's the one with Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah, I saw that one. I saw part of it.
No, the one with Eddie Redmayne is the one I'm talking about. And like, there's a scene in the trailer where he's like losing the ability to walk, like and soon he's not gonna have it, so he's ready to give up. And his wife is like, "If you don't get out of that chair, I'm gonna walk out of here." And it's that idea, like, if you don't choose to fight for yourself, then it doesn't matter. And like I kept waiting for that like literary moment of clarity where Will was like, "You're right. This is my life, and I have to fight for it." And he never did. And I thought that's so stupid. Like that's just not how you write.
Part of me feels like she just wanted to put in a tragic ending.
Yeah,
like in that case, make him die naturally.
But you know, if she wanted to do that, do something that makes us feel more powerfully about the characters, like having him say, "Well, I want to live my life how I can," and like try and fight for it. And then maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe it doesn't work out, and either he still feels like maybe years later that he's like.
What would have been really beautiful is if he was like, "You know what, you're right. I screwed the 6 months. I'm gonna fight for my life." And then they said he had less than 10 years anyway. Like, he was going to die naturally anyway, just because his body couldn't, like, handle, like, even getting a cold or temperatures, is if they'd stayed together and they'd done all those things, and then he died naturally. And it was like, you know what? Here's a good example, is in the movie Up, Carl thinks he failed Ellie because they never went out and did
I love that movie.
Adventurous things. Like, they never climbed all these mountains and stuff, and so when she dies, he thinks he failed her, and then in the end, he never looked through her book, and it's just pictures of them living a happy life together, and she says, "Thank you for the adventures, go have your own." And it's like, that's what this book should have been. It should have been like, you don't need to be rich and spend money to do things. You could just be with people who love you, and that's enough. That's enough for a full life.
Yeah.
I would have thinking even if maybe somebody else other than Louisa and Will had died in the book, and that had made him realize that, I don't know, that's
if her boyfriend died, because he's so fit and, like, able, that he's running all these marathons, like, he's marathon man. If he died, it's like, it can happen to anyone, and it's like,
it was just like, well, like, and it was this idea, it was just, again, like, I think that's what we're getting at, is I don't get why so many people like this. Like, I don't get why they were so impacted by it, because there was no message out of this. Like, the message was to, like, be rich and travel and stuff. Like, that's how you live a full life. And that's only one aspect of one type of lifestyle.
Yeah, because you could be happy with, like, with the small things in life.
And, like, it's I don't like the idea that one's better than the other, because, yes, if you can afford to travel and do all these crazy things and that makes you really happy, then that's great. But if just having a job that you enjoy and then coming home and spending time with people you love, that's just as good. And I hated that this book was like, oh, how Louisa's been living isn't good enough.
I mean, that's been good enough for the past, like, 2,000 years of history.
Yeah,
So to say that that's an inadequate life,
it's more people live like Louisa than like Will, and it's like,
it's understandable that people, they want to do things, and maybe they haven't achieved it yet, and that maybe someday they will go and do these crazy things like skydiving, but it's the fact that you haven't done it, and that you go out and do it yourself, like, you make the choice to do it. That's great, but, like,
I think at the end of the day, just, like, making connections with people you love is more important than, like, any physical thing you can go do. Like, at the end of my life, like, there's a quote I like when one of my, like, best friends died really young, and there was this quote they said at her funeral, and it was by Abraham Lincoln, and they were like, it is not a matter of, like, how many years you live, but how much life you lived in your years. So it's like, you know, it's like, I would love to travel and go abroad and, like, go to all these places and do all these cool things that I don't have the money to do right now. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, I have my family that I love and my friends and, like, things like this that we're doing right now that are fun. It's like, that's just as good.
And, you know, it seems like he was trying to convince her that she wasn't happy when she was.
Yeah, it was like,
if you're happy, you're happy.
Like, you're too dumb to see how, like, not good your life is, and it's like, what an arrogant rich person way of acting.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that so many people like this book, and out of the four of us, none of us did.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, like, I don't want to say anything that's, like, insulting to the people who like it, because that, like, but, you know, it's interesting because a lot of booktube really likes it, and none of us did.
I mean, there are loads of best out there that people like.
Yeah. Do you guys want to pick what we read next month?
Yeah.
What's your suggestion, Peter?
Well, unless you guys want to read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I guess.
I don't.
Maybe not.
I guess the only one I can think of that you guys might like is The Firm by John Grisham.
What's that about?
Yeah, what's that about?
I can read the back to you if you want.
Okay.
When Mitch McDear signed on with Bendini, Lambert, and Locke of Memphis, he thought that he and his beautiful wife Abby were on their way. The firm leased him a BMW, paid off his school loans, arranged a mortgage, and hired the McDears as a decorator. Mitch should have remembered what his brother Ray, doing 15 years in Tennessee jail, already knew. You never get nothing for nothing. Now the FBI has the lowdown on Mitch's firm and needs his help. Mitch is caught between a rock and a hard place with no choice if he wants to live. So basically, he goes and works for this law firm, and then all kinds of crazy stuff starts happening.
How long is that book?
Let me go get some.
How long is it?
Let me go get them.
This book is 545 pages. It's like I decided to read it because Stephen King said something about it in his book on writing. And I'm confident in Stephen King's taste, so.
I've heard a lot of good things about John Grisham.
Me too. I have 3 YA books that I do think like all of us would equally like. Like they're not ones that I think they're ones that I think could like easily fit anybody's taste. They are all YA. The one I think we would all like probably the equal is The Silence of Six.
Oh, I've heard good things about that.
Yeah, this is like do you guys know what it's about? It's like this guy gets on like a school announcement and says, "What is the silence of six and what are you going to do about it?" and then shoots himself, and it's like that kid's best friend is trying to figure it out. This The Star-Touched Queen, which is like this new fantasy release that's getting a lot of hype, and it's about this girl who in whatever made-up world they live in, astrology, like, you know, horoscopes and stuff is a big part, and she's born under a bad star, and so they say her marriage is going to bring like death and destruction, and so her father just like marries her off to a faraway kingdom, and she ends up like a queen, and that's all I really know. But Sarah J. Maas blurbs it along with a lot of other big fantasy writers, and then the last one I have is Girl in the Blue Coat by Monica Hesse. It's like a debut YA, and this is a World War II story about this girl who's like delivering black market goods and then gets kind of enlisted to help find like a missing Jewish girl. But I think the one we'd all probably like the best is The Silent.
Yeah, I mean, I like fantasy, but we read a lot of fantasy in this.
Yeah, this is more of like a YA thriller, and it's not very long. It's like 330 pages. So I would say this is probably my top recommendation. I think we would all like the most.
All right, anyone else?
The Knife of Never Letting Go.
Oh, I tried to read that once and I hated it, so I don't
I guess
honest.
Before I Fall.
That's Lauren Oliver, right?
Yeah.
That's another contemporary. I don't think the guys are going to want to read that because we just read a contemporary.
The past 6 months is when I've been getting into contemporary, and I've read like 10, and I was on a really good streak of really liking them, and this just shattered that completely.
Oh, The Coral Island.
I don't know that one.
I'll just read you the blurb. That's on Goodreads because I have it, but it's another one. 15-year-old Ralph, a mischievous young Peterkin, and clever brave Jack are shipwrecked on a coral reef with only a telescope and a broken pocket knife between them. At first, the island seems a paradise, with its plentiful foods and wealth of natural wonders. But then a party of cannibals arrives, and after that, a pirate ship. What is to become of them?
Damn.
Dun dun dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
And that's only it's 398 pages. So.
Is that a middle grade book?
One sec. Yeah, well, I'll just read you the genres here. It says it's classic fiction, adventure, historical fiction, children's, literature.
Yeah, children's.
Less than the 19th century. Adventures for like pirates, and then young adult. It does say young adult.
Is it really old?
It was published in 2007, but it was first published in 1857.
Oh, okay then.
Like it was first published then, but it was republished then. Yeah.
Maybe we could read. Like, have you guys ever read Treasure Island?
I've never read it, but I want to.
We could read that by Robert Louis Stevenson because
Cool, I would love that.
A classic pirate story. I have a copy of it, but I've never actually read it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't complain about a classic, so.
Yeah, we could do that.
Mhm.
I'd be down with that, yeah.
Is everyone down with that? Because I think that's something everyone would like equally enjoy. Is a classic pirate story.
And they'll probably have it at the library, so I don't have to buy one.
I have a copy of it. Hold on. I have like one of those Barnes and Noble special edition thingies of it. It looks like this.
Oh, that's pretty.
Cool.
Yeah.
That is pretty.
That's really
Making
neat.
me want to buy all these pretty copies of books, Molly.
I bought a new copy of Peter Pan the other day because they had it at Walmart for $9. I was in Walmart to buy washi tape, and that was it. I was like, I'm out of washi tape for my journaling. That's all I'm buying. You have no money, Molly. You don't get paid a Wednesday. You go in, you buy one goddamn thing of washi tape, and you leave. And so then I'm in there, and I'm walking by the book section. I'm like, don't go in there. And they had this Peter Pan book sitting out, and I was like, and it was like $9, and I was like, I need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says when I go on Goodreads that readers also enjoyed Coral Island, which is the book that I was talking about.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's like, and they'll have this, like, this will also just be easier to access, like Peter said, like, with the library and stuff. Like, I'm too broke to buy another book. So, is this what we're reading? Treasure Island?
Yeah.
Sam, you didn't even suggest anything.
Oh, well, I just read The Scorpio Races, and I was going to suggest that, but I do kind of want to read a classic with this group. Yeah.
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 Yay. I think classic children's books are so fun to discuss because they're like such a different style than children's books are today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're so much better. Like,
So much better.
children's books today like talk down to kids so much, whereas children's books, listening to Peter Pan on audiobook and like having someone read it to me, I realized like again, like, because it had been like a year and a half since I've read Peter Pan, how smart like so many of the sentences are. I had it on with my brother in the car. My brother got in the car. We were going to the movies, and I was like, I'll drive because he always drives. And I put it on. I forgot I still had that in the CD rack, and so it just comes on. This British guy narrating, and my brother just like looks at me and he's like, and I'm like, it's Peter Pan on audiobook. And he's like, okay. And we're like near the end, and he's like, the narrator's like, yeah. We could have spoken nicely of her, but I detested her, so I did not. My brother was like, oh, shit's getting real. Like, we'd be listening to the end, and my brother would be like, that is sad as fuck. And I was like, I know. Like, it was the part where it's like he was looking in on the one joy from which he must be forever bored, and my brother was like, damn. I'm like, I know, this is a sad book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So, this was our last book.
And this is our next book.
Don't have it.
I think I'm the only one who does. That's okay.
Happy 1 year anniversary.
Hi.
Thanks
Thanks for having me, guys. I like being in this live show, and I just want to take this time to thank you guys for inviting me to be in it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
I talk more than everybody, and I talk a lot, and I just wanted to say thank you because I really enjoy it, and I love you guys.
Aww.
Oh, thanks. Nice
We
having
love
you.
having you here.
Oh, thanks, guys.
So, we shall see you next month reading Treasure Island.
Bye.
Bye.